Hi, grade 10s. Welcome to week 8 of distance learning, and we're moving on to unit 5. So, this will be our last unit for the remainder of the year. We're going to do a series of about 5 lessons that will prepare you the most as we can for your studies next year and making sure that we're covering as much ground as we possibly can and the key concepts. So what we're working on today is graphing quadratic relations. So we've dealt with linear systems or linear relations, which are straight lines, where a lot of the time we see it in the form of y equals mx plus b. We see this as our slope, y-intercept formula, and that being our linear relations. Now we're going to go into quadratic relations, which are something that we have not done before, but basically a quadratic relation is anything to the exponent of 2. So in this case, a quadratic relation is an equation where the highest exponent of the variable, which is usually x, is 2, like we've just talked about. And then what it looks like when you graph that equation is actually a U-shaped graph. So we call this a parabola, which is a symmetrical U-shaped graph, which means on either side, if it's split right in the middle, it will be the exact same on both sides. So our job right now is to graph these quadratic relations, and these are the steps on how we go about doing this. So the first is, just like we've done with our linear relations, we're going to substitute each value of x into the equation and calculate y. The important thing here is we got to remember your order of operations, or BEDMAS, B-E-D-M-A-S. So again, we're going to be particularly dealing with our brackets and exponents before we deal with our division, multiplication, addition, and subtraction. Then we're going to be able to get a pair of ordered pairs, so x comma y, and we're going to be able to place them on the graph, and from there you'll be able to draw a line or draw a U-shaped graph throughout. So if we go throughout this, one thing I really want to make sure we're aware of is when we're looking at x squared, what that means, okay? So anytime you have a squared number like x squared, if we were to place in a number such as 3, the importance here would be 3 squared. Another way to write this would be 3 times 3, or it's the same thing. If I had 2 squared, it's 2 times 2, or the number. Anytime you square a number, it is that number multiplied by itself. Okay? That's what that means. So as we go through this, you have a better indication of what that looks like. So in the first one, we have y equals x minus 2, and I'll write out the equation the first time. Sorry, x squared, I apologize. All right? And now how that looks would be 3 squared, or 3 times 3, which we know is equal to 9. And if we want to fill in our x comma y, we know that our x over here is 3, and our comma over here with y is what we just solved for, being the coordinates of 3 and 9. We'll plot those at the end, but I will show you how that goes after we calculate a couple more of these. So from here, we're going to have 2 squared, because we're summing in the x value, or 2, into the equation, y equals x squared. So in this case, 2 squared, or 2 times 2 equals 4. So we then have 2 and 4. Going on further, we have 1 squared, and if we make it look like 1 times 1, we know that 1 times 1 equals 1, and when we plot it, in this case, we will have 1 and 1. Now 0 is a funny one. If we multiply 0 by 0, or we do 0 squared, it's still equal to 0, and both the y and x values are 0. Now this is a part that might confuse some people. So if we have negative 1 squared, the reason why I like to write it out as that number multiplied by each other is if we multiply negative 1 and negative 1, those two negative numbers equal a positive, giving us 1. So it would be the x value would be negative 1, as we see in the left-hand column, and the y value being 1. Now, we're going to do the same thing with the values here. So negative 2 squared, or you want to look at it as negative 2 times negative 2. Two negative numbers once again, giving us a positive or positive 4. So it would be negative 2 and positive 4 being our coordinates. And the last one here, we have negative 3 squared, or negative 3 times negative 3, which will give us 9. So in this case, we know once again negative 3 being our x and 9 being our y. So our job now is we've found our x and y coordinates values. Our job now is to plot these points on the graph. So if we go to 3 and 9, our first point will be there. Let's make it a little wider for you guys. So first point being there. Second point, 2 and 4 being right there. Third point being 1 and 1. Fourth point being 0 and 0. And then negative 1 and 1. We've got negative 2 and 4. Negative 3 and 9. And we've got all our table of values. So you're going to use the same table of values. So 3, 2, 1, 0, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, and solve based on the equation. Now our job here, which it might get a little messy, is to draw, to the best of our abilities, a graph that connects through. And it will look like so. Now, what you'll notice, it is a U-shaped graph, and it's the same on both sides, and it's cut right in half at the 0, 0 mark. So it mirrors each other, and it is symmetrical. So there it is. We've done our first quadratic equation, and we've graphed it. So now we're going to move to the next example and do the exact same thing. Knowing that we've done this now, we can move through this potentially a little bit quicker. So now you're going to see something slightly different, but we have the exact same table of values, which we're going to use every single time. And we're going to sub in, once again, our x's into our y equals equation, or our quadratic equation. So in this case, we have y equals x squared plus 2. So in this case, we're going to sub the 3 in to the x spot, and we are going to add 2. So we remember from the last time that this can be it can be written again as 3 times 3, but we're going to move this through this quicker, and then we're going to add 2. So if we did that, 3 times 3 being 9, plus 2 being 11, and therefore our coordinates being 3 from the left side column, and once we did our math to find out what y is equal to, we found y is equal to 11. So I'm not going to rewrite it again, but we have, this time we're subbing 2 in, and it's 2 squared plus 2, so 2 squared being 4, plus 2 equaling 6, giving us, over in this side here, 2 in our x position and 6 in our y. Over on this side here, we've got, once again, 1 squared, which we know 1 times 1 being 1, plus, plus 2 equaling 3. Therefore, our equation, or our coordinates being 1 and 3. Now over here we've got 0 squared once again. You know 0 squared being 0 plus 2 equaling 2. And if we put it into our coordinates, we have 0 from the x and 2 in the y. So this one here, once again, it's important that we do our -1 squared plus 2. So we know -1 squared from the last one being 1. -1 times -1, two negative numbers equaling a positive, plus 2 being 3. So in this column here, we got -1 and 3. Over here, if we did -2 squared plus 2, -2 times -2 being 4, plus 2 being 6, coordinates being -2 from our x, 6 from our y, and finally the last one here, -3 squared, -3 times -3 being 9, plus 2 giving us 11. And finally, -3 and 11. So these are our coordinates, and now we can graph them, just like we did in the last one. So if we go to the first one here, 3 and 11. So we go to 3 on the x-axis, 11 on the y. 1, 2, 3, and 11 right about there. 2 and 6. 1 and 3. 0 and 2. -1 and 3. -2 and 6. And 3 and 11. And if we draw that once again, hopefully it works out. We want to pass through all those points we just drew. And we've come up with our graph. If you notice from the two graphs, the only difference here is this 2 right there. And all we've done is actually move up the whole graph 2 units. Okay. Now, a couple things I want you to take into consideration as going forward. If you're ever unsure how to graph something, you can use this website, www.desmos.com. That will help you with graphing and table of values. And all you need to do is type in the equation, and it will help you with practicing. Now, something you might see may be along the lines of this. Just say something like 3 times or 3x squared. And let's just say we're using x is equal to 1 in this case. It's important that you remember if we sub in the 1 for x, if we use BEDMAS, we need to, using BEDMAS, we're actually using both the brackets and the exponents first. So it would be 3 and then 1 squared, or 1 times 1 equaling 1. So we deal with that part of the equation first, and then we multiply it to equal that. Okay. Similarly, if we had, say, plus 4 here, and we continued on with it, things would stay the same. So it would be brackets first and exponents in our first step. So y equals 3. We've dealt with this. It equals 1. Then it would be multiplication. So 3 times 1 equals 3 plus 4. And then we would go to our addition and subtraction, and that being y equals 7. And if we did our x and y coordinates, it would then be 1 and 7. So there it is. We've done our first graphing quadratic equations or relations, and hopefully this has helped. Please take the note as you go along, and you're going to complete the 5.1 assignment. All the best. Feel free to ask any questions. There's the comment box and the question box on our Google Classroom. All the best, guys. Stay safe. Continue learning away here and just preparing yourself for the future. All the best. Take care.